Welcome to the Advanced Sports Analytics Show here on RotoGrinders. I'm Jordan Cooper, a.k.a. Blenderhead, a.k.a. Blender HD, a.k.a. This past week, actually on top of you in the large field GPP contests. I'm joined by Stuart Gibson of Advanced Sports Analytics. And this is the show that we go over correlation, leverage, stacking opportunities, especially for large field GPPs. And see how the context of the slate determines what directions that we're looking to go in. So Stuart, I don't want to say who had a better weekend this past week, but because I know the answer already.
Yeah, no, I was on top of a few people, but definitely not enough, and definitely not enough to be the $50,000 man. So yeah, I mean, congrats on sick week. Incredible lineup, and really, I think it looked like the core of the lineup was like stuff that we discussed directly on this show. You know, Jefferson over Minnesota chalk, being on the Atlanta side, interest in the Tennessee game from a run, from the Henry side. So like that's awesome when, you can kind of discuss specific points on the show. And I actually watched some of your kind of post video on, how you used Lineup HQ to produce the set of lineups that you did. And I mean, pretty incredible. I've toyed around with some optimizers and stuff and, have a decent feel for it, but definitely not to the extent where, you were just able to enact the decisions and kind of choices you had made so clearly. Like, I think that, was a really interesting video to look at for me. And,
but I mean, you see that I'm using the optimizer to simulate as if you were hand building. You would place the correlations. Essentially, I won by having the 3 leverage points in my lineup all hit a ceiling. That the chalk player failed, but the other guy did well. And then the guy in that price range that was chalk, I had a guy that was better than that in that price range, and then he was correlated with the chalk piece, and no one was playing that combination of Henry Cooks as a secondary. They were playing the full Watson stack, and I just got more value out of Julio and Jefferson, and then T. Higgins was 4%, was barely owned, and since I'm playing a punt tight end, Trey Burton, why not put T. Higgins in the lineup? And then there's obviously the defense you get lucky with. I mean, that's just whatever fits there. But that's why on this show we talk about correlations, and then you get to decide. We will talk about probably 6 or 7 games today that have a high total, and you have to fit the puzzle pieces together. Going here are the 100 puzzle pieces. Here's how they stack up in priority wise, and then feel free to make your own choices and go, well, I think the field's going to do this, so I'm going to do this correlation, and I don't think the field's going to do that and do this. So that's why this is not the type of show where it's we'll tell you who to play, because there could be 100 different options and different lineup combinations that you could go with. Our job is to point them out, and then give you the ability to either with Lineup HQ or hand building for the contest that you're in, reproduce that process. And hopefully, if the outcome happens, you have a good shot at first place.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was a sick build, and very, very cool to just see how, you put those thoughts into an optimizer and produce lineups that reflected the way you were thinking about the slate. So that's super.
Yeah, and if you want to try it, Lineup HQ, if you're not a premium member, rotogrinders.com/media/ASA. The link is in the description below in the YouTube video. You get $5 off your first month of a Core 4 premium subscription, and then you could build lineups. You could use it for 20 lineups. You could use it for a single lineup, and if you're using it for a single lineup, you should put it into the FanDuel single entry series. Right, we have that coming back at RotoGrinders. It started last week, but you don't have to worry that you missed it. Right, it's for weeks 6 through 13. It's single entry contests at 3 different buy-in levels: $5, $33, and $100. And the top 4 combined scores count within each buying tier. So you can miss a week or two, right? Just the top 4 combined. And then the top 2 finishers in each tier advance to a 6-man final with the prize pool of $20,000. So go on FanDuel. Single entry series from RotoGrinders. And Stuart, so for this week, it's we're getting this every week, Stuart, where like there's 11 games and more than half have a 50 plus total. Do you have the psychologically in your head? Because I know like in the past we'd see a 50 plus total and go, oh, that's a game to target. But now like it's almost like a 49 or a 50 total is just average. And then we have like 3 games that are 55, 56, and 57. Like, do we have to just get out of the mindset of like 50 plus is good because like that's almost the average now?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I think like rather than looking at the raw total and just look at probabilities, makes I think as much sense, as ever, given these high totals. Like, we have Green Bay as the most likely team to score the most points. And, you look at that 57 total and that just pops off the page to you because that is a super high total. But when you compare it probabilistically to the other games on the slate, I mean, they're only showing up as a 10%, 10.5% chance of scoring the most points. And like that, the reason we see that suppressed probability, even though there's a super high total, is because there's a bunch of, high totals on the slate. So, I do think there is, even more viability to kind of thinking about things not only in a vacuum as like, is this a high total or is it not? But, how does this total, how does this, total plus spread combination relate to other totals and spreads on the slate, and how can we aggregate that into an understanding of how likely a team is to really break the slate for you,
and then compare that to ownership, right? Because it's a matter of like if it's a 10% probability but it's going to be one of the most owned places, maybe you go down to an 8% probability that's going to be not nearly as owned. Because I think the Packers, it's a 57 total. Packers at Texans. Packers with a little over a 30 implied team total. The Texans with almost a 26.75 currently. This is going to be, I think the ownership is going to be spread out. So I don't think like anything's going to just like jump out and carry so much of the ownership in large field. The thing that I see in this game, though, that's positive and negative. Positive on the Packers, really condensed, right? I mean, it's condensed. It's Rodgers, Adams. Maybe you throw in MVS or Tanyan maybe as a secondary, or Aaron Jones as the running back. I think Aaron Jones and Devontae Adams have shown to be negatively correlated. So you're probably not going to play them both together. So you're probably going to play either a skinny stack with Adams or double stack with MVS, or you play the other side of the game. And Watson's going to be one of the most popular quarterbacks on the slate. So you could do Watson, Fuller, Cooks. If Aiken's back, he's a cheap tight end. Maybe you throw in a Cobb. The thing is in this game about like stacking like 2+1 skinny or 3+1 double is that like what leverage do I get from it? Because there's nowhere else to go. Like if you're going to be like, well, Adams is going to be popular. I'm going to take you're going to take who has a ceiling? Like who's going to be negatively correlated to both Jones and Adams? Like it means the Packers don't do well. I mean, and then if the Packers don't do well, then the Texans probably don't put up a ceiling. So to me, I'm looking at this game going, how do I find leverage here if I do want to fade it?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, MVS to me is a possible leverage play. I don't know. I think probably the chalky move would be to skinny stack Green Bay, Adams plus Rodgers and leave it at that. I do want,
but that would be that's what people are going to do. We have Devontae Adams at 16% projected ownership. I'm assuming that's going to go up a little. It may end up closer to 20. We have Rodgers at 6%, which is above average for a quarterback. We have, if we look at Valdez-Scantling, I'm assuming he's going to be lower, but the 2 to 3%. So yeah, I get it. It seems like if I'm going to do that, I need to play MVS because and anyone that stacks that game or has that combination, like it's going to be Rodgers Adams, or Adams is a run back and a Watson stack. It just like, how do I get different here?
Yeah, I mean, so right, I agree. Like just Adams and Rodgers are going to be chalky. I do wonder if there's one way to get leverage if you do like Adams, which I think makes sense. Like he projects well. Adding on top Marquez Valdez-Scantling, I think could be one way to get different from the probably consensus construction, which would be just Adams and Rodgers. You'd also gain leverage against Jones, I think, with Valdez-Scantling. I'm not sure that I'd really be interested in like an MVS Rodgers skinny stack. To me, that seems a little thin. But I do wonder, like, take for example, last week we saw Tennessee. I think Tannehill was a pretty popular quarterback play. AJ Brown, popular wide receiver play. Henry, popular running back play. But I have to imagine that the combination of those three pieces probably would have been less likely. And I know it's not, quite apples to apples in that Henry's a running back and Valdez-Scantling is a wide receiver. But, I do wonder if there's a way to be different in going just overloaded on a team that maybe people might be more inclined to either take a skinny approach or take a, popular running back approach. I don't know.
I think that the more leverage way to do it is to take the secondary correlation and fade both Adams and Jones.
Okay.
Like that obviously that's the less probable situation, right? That Watson's going to be owned, Adams is going to be owned, Jones is going to be owned. Obviously, if in Watson stacks, you can get Fuller and Cooks. So it's not like they're going to come in at low ownership, but a lot of Fuller and Cooks is going to be tied to Watson.
Yeah.
And the run back is going to be Adams or Jones. Because if you're going to stack Watson and he puts up a big game, you're probably going to want to run it back with one of the Green Bay key players, not MVS as a run back. So why not do just a secondary correlation in another stack and just go, I'm going to play MVS on one side and I'm going to play David Johnson on the other side, or MVS and Fuller or Cooks, and do that. The quarterbacks don't get there. The game actually goes under. It goes under the 57. Adams has a decent game, but doesn't get 100 yards. But MVS has a 100-yard game. He could get he's gotten 70-yard touchdowns. He has a 3 for 101 type of line, and he's 4,100. So, he's 3 for 100, and 1 is 22 points on DraftKings for 4,100. And most likely at low ownership, he's busting Jones and he's busting Adams in the process. And you don't have to stack, because if you have to stack, you have one of those pieces in that busted. So like your stack doesn't get there.
Yeah. No, he's got, I think, really good properties as just a deep threat guy where he can, completely wipe out a drive for any other players on the team. Jones or Adams, not obviously Rodgers works well. Just, one correlation note, like Fuller has really, really strong correlation with Watson, such that I'd be a little I don't know. I might prefer, like, Johnson, I think, is an interesting call, but like Fuller has such high correlation with Watson. It seems unlikely that Fuller has an exceptional game in which Watson doesn't have an exceptional game. Like their correlation over 24 games since 2018 is 0.61. That's quite high.
Very high. That's quite high. Right.
So, Cooks has a 0.58 correlation with Watson, but it's over a 6-game sample. So, maybe we're just seeing kind of a noisily high correlation. But yeah, I mean, if trying to kind of get this game as a secondary stack, I might be a little hesitant to go with Fuller on the Houston side, just because it seems unlikely that Fuller has a big game in which Watson doesn't. You really are just counting on similarly priced quarterbacks to really exceed Watson.
Right. I mean, the concept there is that it's like playing the chalk guy as the one-off. Is like if they do well, like the stack does well. And I'm not playing the stack. I'm playing the secondary. So it defeats the purpose of me. If I played Fuller plus MVS and that gets there, it's most likely Watson. I should have had Watson plus Fuller. And then the people with the stacks end up actually beating me out.
Yep.
Okay, so the next game on the docket, 56 total. I'm not sure how popular this game is. Judging ownership, I know it's on a Thursday, so Jamino has initial ownership. I mean, you can look around, you can compute some yourself. You listen to shows. I mean, obviously, you have some groupthink going on. We have the Cardinals and the Seahawks. Seahawks with a 29.75 implied total currently. Cardinals 26.25 currently. And this is another game similar to like what I said about the Packers, that like with the Seahawks, like we know what it is. If you're stacking the Seahawks, it's Wilson, Lockett, Metcalf, right? I mean, like the correlation is there. And then like the most obvious side of the Cardinals would be Hopkins, but like you can't play that. How do you afford
that? Yeah, and maybe the 60,000 salary cap contest, but if you're playing 50, yeah, it's going to be pretty tight. I mean, you could ride, Kirk had a big week last week, but it was really just 2 touchdowns on 2 targets. Like, I'm not sure that is a trend that you can count on moving forward. I don't.
So what exactly are the top scoring probabilities for both these teams? Because I mean, even the Cardinals have a 26 plus implied total. So I mean, I'm assuming the Arizona is not far down on the list.
Yeah, we have Seattle at 10.1%, second place behind Green Bay. We have Arizona down at 11th at 4.6%. My fear with the Arizona side is that it's an expensive stack that so thinking just, I think Murray, Hopkins, Kirk would be kind of the most generic stack is, Hopkins is so darn expensive and Murray's not cheap either. It's just a lot in my opinion, it's a lot to pay for a team whose likelihood of scoring the most points on the slate isn't as high as some other teams that just have cheaper stacking pieces. I mean, the Seattle side is an expensive stack to me, just because the correlation properties of that Wilson, Metcalf, Lockett stack are so exceptional. I don't know, might be, and it's also going to be a popular stack. I mean, the average ownership cumulative of these 3 guys and Millie makers so far this year is 40, almost 49%. It's a lot. I mean, it's expensive. It's potential to be quite chalky, but the correlative properties of the stack are so good, and it's just not even close. Like, there's not a team that correlates as well as that Seattle passing attack, and by even a small margin. So it might be one of these high games where I'm just willing to eat high ownership, eat high salary, and try to get different elsewhere in those lineups. As mentioned, it's going to be tough to bring back Hopkins if you're going with those 3 Seattle guys. So.
And do you really want to bring it back with Drake? That doesn't seem like shootout 3+1 style. I'm getting more the feeling that Drake is if the game goes under, Drake does well. Like, not if the game goes over.
Yeah. I guess so. I mean, oh God, he had that. I mean, his one big run last week. Like, I don't know that that's super repeatable, but
he's 4,800 on DraftKings. It's not like he's 6,000.
Yeah, but I mean, you just if he's going to just hit value by putting together 20 rushes for 100 yards and a touchdown, you just really need one of those to be. I mean, that's great. I'm just saying you would like for one of those to be like a speed up long run. If he gets to 100 yards with a long of 16 and just puts it together by, piecing together drives, catching 10-yard passes. To me, that feels like not a great speed up kind of script that would really help the other side.
Right. That's why I'm making the point of maybe you fade both sides and you play Carson and Drake. Not in the same lineup, but I mean one of the two, because I'm taking a look of like, can you make a Seattle stack instead of playing one of Lockett or Metcalf, you play Moore, David Moore at 3,100. The problem with this slate, I don't want to call it a problem. To me, it's not a problem. It's a godsend. So to me, it's whatever. I like these types of slates. I believe that very similar to last week, that the 6K wide receiver range, that 6K plus type of range, there's so many ceiling wide receivers. Like this, like to me, this is a 4 wide receiver week. This is a wide receiver in the flex for GPP type of week. And if I'm going to, let's say, play a Seattle stack where I'm playing Lockett and David Moore, right? A $3,100 wide receiver to lower that stack size, right? And then I could play Hopkins, right? Because now that I'm paying less, now I can run it back with Hopkins, and that whole stack together is not like exorbitantly priced. The problem is that I'm playing a $3,100 wide receiver with a ceiling of 16. I mean, like, I just think from a raw points perspective, I think the opportunity cost at wide receiver. A lot of times we've been talking about this all year about running backs and the cheap running backs and touchdown variants and all that type of stuff. I'm getting more of the sense that opportunity cost, while we normally in the past viewed it at running back. How do I play a $4,200 running back? How do I play Philip Lindsay $4,300? Because then I can't get Zeke, and I can't get Kamara, and I can't get those types of guys. I'm viewing it as I'm looking at the wide receiver pool, going like, I'm just going to quickly go Hopkins, Adams, Thomas, Ridley, Metcalf, Jones, Diggs, Cooper, Fuller, Golladay, Lockett, Tyreek Hill, AJ Brown, Keenan Allen. I mean, like, dude, these are guys that could put any of these guys could put up 30 plus points on any given week in any matchup. I can't say the same about the running backs. I mean, 30 points. I'm not talking about 20. I'm talking about 30 points. Like, there may not be a single running back that gets 30 points this week. There may be one or two. So if I'm going to build a Seattle stack with David Moore in there, like, it seems like I'm wasting the opportunity cost of the wide receiver. And then if I'm not going to get different in the Seattle stack, and they're coming in projected around in the mid-teens. So we have Wilson as 10%, one of the highest owned quarterbacks on DraftKings, 10%. Then we have Lockett and Metcalf are both 15, 13%. And they're obviously correlated, so most of the lineups that have those guys in it, I kind of don't feel that if I'm going to play a one-off, maybe I play Lockett as a one-off. Maybe. But other than that, to me, the higher probability play would be play the Seahawks stacks and then find someone to run it back with. But I just think that from a large field GPP perspective, I think it's almost better to just hope that game goes under and just play the running backs as one-offs.
Yeah, I mean, a correlated stack is like positive correlation is good for playing, but it's also good for fading. Like, it is actually pretty unlikely that, like, if Lockett has a ceiling game, Russ and Metcalf sync. They're a heavy kind of combination. They sync together. They underperform together, but then they also exceed together. And so, like, it does give you opportunities to just fade the entire game. I think to me, the fact that there's so much positive correlation there, it's an either, you play the full stack or you fade the full stack or fade the full game because of that positive correlation by taking individual pieces, Lockett only or Metcalf only. There are kind of fewer routes to just the piece that you picked succeeding and then, all the other pieces failing, such that you're able to, like, leapfrog the people that have kind of the full game stack. So
you convinced me, Stuart. I'm Xing him out. I'm Xing out the Seahawks this week, and I have no problem doing that. If they score 40 points, then I lose, right?
Yeah,
right. That's just the way to. But I mean but that's, you see the thought process. That's why I'm asking you. I mean, you know much more. You have much more of the figures and models with the correlation. I do it by feel, right? I mean, I get a sense of it. I do look at correlation coefficients, but I don't update them or anything. I'm just kind of whatever. Can I play this guy by himself? Do I need to do this or whatever? But let's go to the next game, which I think less people will be on. I think this is going to be reverse recency bias. It's the Lions and the Falcons. We're going to get no. I think it's actually going to be there's going to be a recency bias play in this game, and there's going to be a reverse recency bias in this game. Lions Falcons being played in Atlanta in the Dome, 55 total. Falcons 28.5 current implied total. Lions 26.5 current implied total. I don't think people think that Ryan could do it again. Like I don't. I think the line. I think DeAndre Swift is going to be overowned. People are not going to realize that he actually he got just as many snaps as he normally gets in a game. He just happened to have a 54-yard run. He got one extra goal line drive opportunity. Like that's it. AP was on the goal line 2 other times, and he scored one of them. So while the trend is Swift is moving in the right direction, there's nothing remarkable other than he was extremely efficient the last game compared to AP. And if he's going to come in, we have him currently projected at 9% ownership at 5,400. AP is 4,600 and at 1% ownership. And then the Falcons have been more priced up. We have Julio now at 7,100. We have Ridley at 7,300. They're still being projected at less than 10% owned. Like, so I'm not scared of the Lions defense. The only thing I'm scared of is Matt Patricia, running the game out. If the Lions take a lead, and of course we all know that the Falcons could easily give up points. Based on the ownership, like why can't I play? Why can't I play a stack in this game? And it's in the Dome, and people are going to be. I mean, Gurley has more ownership. I mean, let me take a look at him. Where did he go?
Yeah,
Gurley, because people like playing him. He always gets over in 12% owned. Gurley is more owned than Julio and Ridley at 6,000 because the Lions' rush defense is horrible. This game, because like the perception is, I want to play Swift, I want to play Gurley, like as if the game doesn't have a 55 total. It's the third highest total on the slate, and with now that Golladay has been priced up a bit, he's only coming in at 10% as opposed to 22% last week. Like, why doesn't it make sense to, like, just from a correlation perspective as well as a leverage perspective of why aren't I playing Stafford, Golladay, Julio?
Yeah, no, I like where your head's at with the Atlanta side. I mean, it's an expensive stack, but you're going to get suppressed.
I'm skinny. But Stewart, I'm skinny stacking that, right? Okay. I'm playing one. I'm not going to play Julio and Ridley together.
Okay, that makes sense. It's not historically hasn't been good correlation between the two. I mean, I'm particularly interested in the Detroit side. Going Stafford, Golladay. We talked about Hawkinson last week as being a nice correlative piece, as where Jones and Golladay really, contradict one another. They have strong negative correlation that makes it difficult to stomach playing them together. But I think on the Detroit side, like, aside from Golladay, I think it's a reasonably priced stack. You can get Stafford, Golladay, Hawkinson for 18.2 combined. The ownership historically on this stack hasn't been super, super high. I think it was probably pretty high last week. There was a lot of buzz around Golladay, and they obviously had a good matchup. But yeah, I mean, I'm intrigued by kind of this Detroit side, and especially if people are going to be on Swift in a big way. I think it's a good opportunity to get a, I think, well-priced stack. That maybe the concern with Hawkinson is he does lack like a huge ceiling, and I think that's a fair and real concern. And maybe the approach might be to leave him off and just go Stafford, Golladay, and bring back one of the Atlanta guys. Or like you mentioned, Ryan, an Atlanta receiver, and then bring back Golladay. But yeah, I think there's some stuff to work with in this game for sure.
And then, of course, I'm going to have my mandatory because they priced him down even further. But he's down to what, 4,400? I'm probably going to I'm going to have 10% Marvin Jones Jr. and I just know those lineups are going into the incinerator.
I mean, he even last year he's been a pretty up and down guy. But yeah, he has not looked very involved in the.
Very involved. He's playing every snap. He's playing every drop back.
Yeah,
right. I mean, that's the thing that how do I not play like a guy that's going to be single digit owned possibly and maybe not in the stack as a one off. He has 4 touchdown upside. I know because I won big money on his last time he had 4 touchdowns. So how do I? It's not like he's not playing. If you told me he was playing 30% of the snaps, I'd be like, okay, then I don't bother with it. He's playing 95% of the snaps and literally all of Stafford's dropbacks.
Yeah, I mean, he's just not getting looks. I'm trying to pull up his target share week over week, and I believe it's been quite low. But you're right. I mean, he's on the field. I never played kind of football at a organized level, so I don't really have a good sense of just is he just not getting looks because of the way the plays are shaking out or the matchup he's drawing, and just over the long haul there's some steady state like we project for one variable we control for is targets per snap. Do you believe that variable or just latent trait, how often is a guy getting the ball thrown his way when he's on the field? Is that steady over the long term, or is there reason to believe that because of the way the team's operating this year, I mean, it's more or less the same players, at least in the receiving core. Maybe you could make the case that Hawkinson has ascended a little bit, but is there reason to believe that Jones's kind of targets per snap will stabilize in the near future? Is there something going on that
maybe there's an internal conflict. Maybe they don't like each other.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you see that, right? Maybe Stafford has Jones by the balls, which is a good time to mention Manscaped, right? Autumn is in the air, and Manscaped is here to ensure you don't carve your pumpkins. You get it? Carve your pumpkins when you're grooming. By pumpkins, we actually mean your boys downstairs. They wrote that. They thought that you weren't going to get the metaphor. But you get the metaphor. Your pumpkins, your balls. In fact, Manscaped is on a mission to change the way you approach caring for your balls, and great news. They've released their products in the UK, Canada, and Australia. I don't know. I think they still call it balls there. So let's not forget about it's the best trimmer for not just your balls, for your butt and your body. The Lawnmower 3.0 trimmer offers a replaceable ceramic blade with advanced skin-safe technology, which helps avoid and reduce grooming accidents. Because you don't want to go to hospital like that. That's very embarrassing. Their new Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer uses the same skin-safe technology when you're trimming those delicate nose hairs of yours. Very delicate. I don't really have. I have a lot of nose hair, so it's not really that delicate. The Crop Care Kit includes the Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant. Yes, I said it. Ball deodorant. Everyone knows pumpkin spice lattes and ball deodorant go hand in hand. Not my joke. Crop Cleanser Body Wash, a full body wash that you could also use on your hair. Crop Mop Ball Wipes. You never know when an opportunity strikes, so you should always be prepared. You don't want to stink when you sit around that Thanksgiving dinner. I like that we've shifted holidays already through it. Okay, it's full autumn. I guess this will last you through Halloween as well as Thanksgiving. So if you suffer from stank foot, that is a thing, stank foot. Or you stand on your feet all day, then I have a product for you. The Foot Duster, foot deodorant. It's a free gift. The Cool and Treat oil offers a pleasant experience for your stankiest feet and allows you to take your shoes off in confidence. The Manscaped Refined Cologne is a cost-effective way to smell clean and fresh for your date. The Crop Cleanser Hair and Body Wash was designed with aloe vera and sea salt to leave your skin clean, fresh, moisturized, and reinvigorated. And these formulations are all vegan, cruelty-free, dye-free, sulfate-free, paraben-free, and probably Marvin Jones-free. So you can get your manhood. You can make sure that it's in good hands. So get 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com with the code ROTO, R-O-T-O. Get 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com with code ROTO. Make your balls a priority this fall. You like the way I was able to, I got everything in. I got everything into that one.
All the balls, love it.
Right, that's all the balls. I just want those balls to go to Marvin Jones. Maybe. So let's go to the next game. I think this game, the popularity of this game is going to depend on one player. I think it's going to go. I think it's not going to go under the radar, but I think pieces will go under the radar, or like stacking combinations. I'm talking about the Panthers at the Saints. It's a 51 total in the Dome, 29.25 implied total for the Saints, 21.75, so fairly low for the Panthers. Michael Thomas is supposed to come back, but we've already heard that he's coming off a high ankle sprain, and apparently he's now nursing a hamstring injury. That's the reports out of practice. Well, we'll know. If he's practicing in full on Friday and Saturday, then obviously he's going to play. Because this is the type of thing, Stuart, where with that high of a total for the Saints, obviously I'd like to know what the top score probability that you have for it is. But if Thomas is out, that means Kamara becomes pretty good at 7,900, and then if Thomas is in, I mean, I think he's probably a little underpriced at 7,600 with that total. So I think it's going to very much depend on whether or not MT is going to play and if the field thinks he's 100%.
Yeah, I mean, do you think the field will be interested in playing both Thomas and Kamara together?
I think people do, and I don't.
Yeah.
Would you consider them to be enough negatively correlated?
They've had positive correlation back through 2018, 30 games together. Positive 0.2 correlation. I think, well, I don't know what people think, but I could see the tendency to maybe, plug in the idea that running backs and receivers negatively correlate. They historically have been a pair that correlates well together.
Well, it's primarily due to the fact that Kamara is essentially a wide receiver that runs the ball. So, yeah. I mean, he's going to puck like Breeze, Kamara, Thomas. Like Kamara gets his ceiling through receiving yards, so that makes the same sense of why like Lockett and Metcalf are positively correlated.
Yeah, and they just account for so much of a share of the team's like red zone looks and scoring that when one is pushing, helping the Saints push the ball downfield, it inherently sets up elevated opportunities for either that play or the other to score a touchdown. I think teams like that are less condensed around the goal line, maybe you might see more negative correlation between running backs and receivers. But it's like if the Saints get into the red zone, it's a pretty good chance that Kamara or Thomas are going to score, aside from, the Taysom Hill gadget play. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a similar, hypothetical stack to the Seattle side. Expensive, but a high likelihood of they're third behind Seattle by about 1% less likely than Seattle to score the most points on the slate. 8.8% chance for New Orleans. They're expensive. They're likely to be fairly chalky. They don't have quite as good correlation as the Seattle threesome, but I mean, those Kamara and Thomas in particular just have access to ceilings that I think few other players on the slate have. And it's not super likely that they both achieve ceilings together, but it's not, I think, completely unlikely. I think this is a game for me to be somewhat interested in, and kind of would be, just for the price point, would be a preferred stack, compared to like Green Bay or Atlanta or Arizona is kind of similar in price point. For me, this is a stack that I'm reasonably intrigued by.
Nope, I have no interest in it whatsoever.
All right.
I like the other side. Let's go to the other side. Mike Davis projects to be the second highest owned running back on the slate. Both of the running backs in this game are going to be owned. Kamara is going to be owned. Davis is going to be owned as a pass catching running back against, obviously, Saints typically have a good rush defense, but Davis's ceiling gets there through, getting, we're just going to discount the last game. He only got 2 targets and assume that, Bridgewater revenge game, right? Coming into the dome because he used to play for the Saints. DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson are both under 6K. They're both currently projected under 10% ownership. I know that the sample size with Robbie Anderson on the Panthers is just this season, but I'm going to just ponder a guess that Anderson, Moore, and Bridgewater is actually the most condensed target and volume and opportunity there is in the entire league. More so than Lockett and Metcalf, more so than other teams. That if I'm going to play Thomas or Kamara, and then fading Davis at 20+% ownership, why aren't I playing the Panthers either as a skinny or as a double stack? Because it's affordable. It's affordable and it correlates and it's leverage off of Mike Davis. So I get the best of both worlds. And they're playing in the dome. So it could be it's a shootout in the dome or whatever. Bridgewater looked horrible last week, and we'll get some recency bias. We have him coming in at 1% ownership. I'm looking at large fields going condensed target tree, playing in the dome against a pass funnel defense. Why can't I play 2 wide receivers at 6K? I mean, the stack size is under 18K for the Carolina side, and then I play the expensive piece, the Kamara, the Thomas, and Mike Davis fails, but the game still shoots out. And doesn't that make sense? I mean, yes, it's less probable. I always have to highlight with the asterisk. Yes, obviously it's less probable, but in comparison to the ownership, that seems like a way that if that outcome happens, I scoot up to first place in the GPPs.
Yeah, I mean, my fear with the Carolina side is they just don't have a very strong total. I mean, we're projecting them at a 1.5% chance of scoring the most points on the slate. And, granted, these pass happy, if the team, goes super pass heavy, there are routes to that stat getting there, even if kind of the team total doesn't quite get there. I don't know. To me, it just feels like a kind of low total. And there are at least teams that we have as more likely to, score the most points on the slate that are cheaper. I think could come in at comparable ownership. So I don't know.
I'm just making the case. I'm not saying that I'm not saying lock buttoning these guys in. I'm not saying that I go all in, whatever. If Mike Davis was less owned, I'd be less inclined. I mean, it's a matter of I see it's condensed as well as leveraged. So if Mike Davis was 6% owned, I wouldn't be as. It's how do I bust Mike Davis lineups? Well, by playing the passing game, right? That's kind of how I'm looking at it. And then I could still play a chalky Thomas or a chalky Kamara, and that combination is not owned in the tournament. But I think we're going to talk more about. Is this the game that you like? Is this the sneaky game? The next game that with the highest total of 50.5. It's open at 52. I'll preface this by saying this is my favorite game on the slate. It's not the highest probability game on the slate. I'm hoping me and Stuart agree with this.
No, I think we like this one. If you're talking about the game, I think you are.
then I don't want to sound like an idiot if I say it and you're like, oh no, I hate it. Are we talking about the Browns at the Bengals?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Browns at the Bengals, 50.5 total. The Browns are favorite. 27 implied total. Bengals 23.5 implied total. Recency bias. Mayfield sucks. Okay, we get that out of the way. Kareem Hunt stands to figure to be one of the highest owned running backs on the slate, and that's about it. Every other player in this game is projected to be single digit owned, and it's a 50.5 total. And this is one of those games, Stuart, that you would think I would say what I've been saying other games, in the past of Bengals Browns. How is it 50.5? This sounds like a 44 total. The Browns have actually put up points, even with Mayfield playing badly. The Bengals can put up points, even with Burrow not being great. This could be I consider this a wide range of outcome game. If you told me that this game was 38-35, I would not be surprised. If you told me this game was 10-7, I would not be surprised.
Yeah.
So I think so many are playing Hunt at 6,800 with no Chubb and the Bengals rush defense. But like Tyler Boyd is 5,400. T. Higgins is 5,300. Burrow is 5,500. Like if I'm going to play Hunt, why don't I play the double stack of Burrow with them so I mitigate that ownership? And then if I want to do the opposite, now I'm getting leverage. So instead of playing Hunt, I'm playing Mayfield, OBJ, and Hooper. And then if Hunt doesn't get there, I get the leverage there. It just seems like this is the game that offers the perfect combination of, if you want to play chalk Hunt, you have correlative elements that much more less people are going to play. Or if you want to get leverage off of Hunt, it's right there. And then you could run it back with a sub 6K wide receiver or a Joe Mixon, assuming that he's healthy. I think this kind of changes a little bit if Mixon is out, which Bernard is going to be super chalk at his price. So that the dynamics of where you get leverage may change. But with you being excited about this, I mean, what are the probabilities that you have for a team like the Browns as well as a team like the Bengals?
Yeah, so not like super high probabilities, but they're just so cheap. Like I think just relative to price, they are far more palatable kind of probabilities. So we have Cleveland at 5.7%, eighth most likely team to score the most points. Cincinnati down at 2.3%, 14th most likely to score the most points. But I mean, Burrow, Boyd, Higgins, you can get for 16.2K. Like that is, over $1,000 cheaper than, Roethlisberger, Claypool, Schuster, or Tannehill, Brown, Davis. I mean, Dalton, Cooper, Lamb. Like there's just so many games that project comparably in terms of likelihood to top the slate that are just so much more expensive. Like, I mean, Higgins and Boyd have just been taking up like so much of Cincinnati's pass game usage over the last 4 weeks. The lowest target share for either guy is T. Higgins at 19.4%. So like these are guys that are just locked in, at least over the past 4 weeks, have been locked in to like 20+% target shares. It's a game that I think, like you said, just could shoot out in a way that people aren't expecting. And pieces that I think would typically slow this game down, like Chubb is out. So, I think that is going to speed Cleveland up a decent bit. And like Mixon has been used more in the passing game than in recent years. I mean, historically, I think Cincinnati's just been like a hand it to Mixon and kind of grind out the game, but they really haven't been playing that way this year. And then on the Cleveland side, I mean, they are, like I said, 5.7% chance to score the most points. And, Mayfield's cheap. Beckham's cheap. I mean, God, Landry has been pretty dusty so far this year, but he is super cheap. Hooper is, I think, at a very, efficient price given the volume that he's been seeing over the last couple of weeks. I do have concerns about kind of what his ceiling is. I'm not sure that it's super high, but I mean, yeah, if Hunt is going to be the chalk, like I would just be super interested in going Burrow, Boyd, Higgins, and then bringing it back with Beckham, something like that. To me, seems like a really compelling, 3+1.
Last game on the docket with a 50.5 total. So this has come down also 2 points. It's Pittsburgh at Tennessee. Tennessee is the favorite with a 26 implied team total. Pittsburgh 24.5 implied team total. Really, the only piece of this game that is garnering that much ownership is if Deontay Johnson is back for the Steelers. He's 4,200 on DraftKings, and it's a small sample size. But if he goes back to what his target share was the first couple of games, he seems like a good median value. Maybe not a ceiling play, but median value. Henry's ownership is going to come down at 7,500, but it'll still be owned enough. We haven't projected at 10% against the Steelers' run defense is probably the top in the league. From a leverage standpoint, I don't see much here because not much is owned. But from a stacking perspective, based on the probabilities do you have and the prices of the players in the game that would correspond to an over, a shootout, like, am I crazy to say that this is almost an X-out game?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like not particularly high likelihood of either of these teams topping the slate. And I mean, I think the Tennessee side, like there's decent enough pricing, on Tannehill, Brown, and Davis, but I don't know. I mean, you can just get like Cincinnati, Cleveland for so much cheaper, and I don't know, probably still a little bit less ownership. Yeah,
we don't. If you don't want, if there's nothing to talk about, I'm perfectly fine. Just like, yeah, this whatever. I mean,
no, I don't have much on this game. I mean, are
there any other games? Because we've covered the high total games. Is there any other? We get to the segment now where we put everything else in a bucket and go. Is there anything that you see in the totals that are lower than that? Because obviously we have like the Bills and the Bills and the Chiefs and the Chargers have like high implied totals while their game total is lower. So
like how do you handle that? Because I mean, the Bills make sense. Like to me, it seems unlikely that the Jets are able to compete and carry a competitive game. But like to me, a team like the Chargers, I know they're pretty strong favorites to Jacksonville, but they have a good total, good price. Would expect, at least historically, have carried low ownership. But like you mentioned, the glaring flaw is that there's just high risk for it to be a non-competitive game. LAC in particular will run the ball, if given the opportunity. I mean, for you, is there like a tipping point where it's just like, this game just has not enough chance of being competitive where, just can't be considered? Or
no, I go the opposite way. I think what if? Because remember, I don't predict outcomes. I'm playing for outcomes. So, for instance, you mentioned the Chargers. Yeah. The Chargers are going to be owned. Like the path to the Chargers failing is much higher than I think the field is realizing on the way that the Chargers play when they're ahead. Okay? And then Jacksonville on the other side doesn't have like how many run back? I mean, it's Chark and a whole bunch of receivers. But we have Hunter Henry projected 20% owned. Keenan Allen projected 15% owned. Justin Jackson and Joshua Kelly combined at 16% owned. Chark at 10%. Like it's owned. If this game wasn't owned, I'd be like, I'd consider it. But then we take a look at the Bills Jets, and like everyone is thinking, that this is not going to be competitive enough where the Bills put up 40 points. Because the Jets have 3, because they have nothing. I think in terms of, let me take a look. All I have to do is take a look at the ownership, right? And this is let's go to the Buffalo Jets. I'm not saying I'm doing it, but dude, Stephon Diggs is 4% owned. Jamison Crowder is projected for 1% ownership. Why can't I play a skinny stack of Allen, Diggs, Crowder at that ownership and hope that this is the one game that Adam Gase just gets out of his ass and actually doesn't run the ball 7,000 times, right? Why can't I play Devin Singletary in this? Or John Brown if he's actually healthy? Yeah. Only because the ownership is like one. These are the stack. The ownership is ridiculous. There's less paths for this game to do well, but I'm getting the ownership discount on it to do it versus the Chargers, where I think there are more paths for it to fail, and I'm overpaying because the ownership is there. That's why, like, taking a look like a game like Washington and Dallas. It's a game that I wanted to bring up. The narrative is that the Cowboys suck, right? The defense sucks. Terry McLaurin is going to be chalky. We have him currently at 15% owned at 5,800. He may come in at 20%. Zeke is going to get 10, 12% ownership, which at 7,800 seems like a deal. People have been playing him even when he was 30% owned. And then everyone else in this game is nothing. But Cooper and Lamb are obviously overpriced on DraftKings. Gallup isn't, though. So, like, why can't I go for a vomit stack of, Allen, McLaurin, Zeke, Gallup, something like that? It's less probable, but why am I playing the Chargers? And so why can't I? I'm not saying I'm doing this. Mm-hmm. I'm saying that why at the cheaper price and the lower ownership that I think there's more paths for this game to actually score more points than the Chargers game failing. Like that kind of the contrapositive of that.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're kind of letting ownership projections dictate how you're handling some of these games that have unlikely routes to being competitive, but every game has some route to being competitive. It sounds like you're kind of weighing probability of competitiveness against ownership. And yeah, because I had the Chargers and Bills were kind of two games that I had circled as like, if they're competitive, like those are teams that I'd want to stack up. The concern is that it's spread would suggest that it's unlikely or not as likely that they are competitive.
But there are leverage points in the game. So, like, I want to make it very clear to people watching and listening that, like, I may not X out the Chargers, but if Keenan Allen gets chalky or Hunter Henry gets chalky, maybe I'm playing a lot of Mike Williams one-offs, right? Or maybe I'm playing a secondary correlation where I'm playing Mike Williams with DJ Chark, but I'm not playing the stack. And the same way that in the Dallas-Washington game, if McLaurin ends up owned enough, like maybe I'm playing Gibson.
Yeah, of course.
Right. You say you get right. You're right, Stuart. You're getting it right. You play the guy opposite, and then you correlate that with the cheap piece of the Gallup on the other side. So I'm still not stacking the game like traditional stacking with the quarterback, but I'm getting the secondary correlation. So that's why I like pointing out, at least on the show, like the bucket of games at the bottom where they still have value. And just like what we said in the beginning of the show, like with me, like I'm going to X out the Seahawks because yes, it's high probability, but I see no way to get leverage. Like I just seen like either I play them and try to get contrarian elsewhere, or I just fade them completely because to play them as one-offs just makes, from a correlation standpoint, doesn't make enough sense for a large field GPP.
Got it. Yeah, I like the. I had kind of Washington circled as a interesting, vomit stack opportunity. I mean, I get the sense that McLaurin will be pretty chalky. I do wonder if he'll be chalky as a single piece, or how many of those lineups that are using him will be deploying him as part of like a Allen, McLaurin, Gibson.
No, Stuart, I can tell you it's going to be a one-off. Or it may be a type of thing where people play the expensive secondary correlation. They're playing McLaurin and then Zeke opposite. They're using up the running back spot. But I don't think that's the best route to go, because I don't think Zeke's ceiling, like if Zeke has a ceiling game, like I'm just paying too much for it. If I'm going to play Zeke, I'm going to play him as a one-off. I may not even play Zeke. I'm looking at cheap pieces. Like I don't want to pay up at running back this week. So that's why Maybe Zeke gets there. You're right. Maybe he does. But I'm not prioritizing. I'm much more prioritizing the high-priced wide receivers. I'd much more rather play Devontae Adams as a one-off, or Hopkins as a one-off, or Julio as a one-off, or any of those guys up there than play Zeke in a running back spot. When I have cheap, I'll play Antonio Gibson at 5K. I'll play Kenyon Drake if I need to. I'll play Joe Mixon. I think I got guys in the five. David Johnson, fine. I'm not sure on this slate, based on the projections that I'm looking at, that the ceiling probability on the running backs is like Kamara has a ceiling. Sure, okay. I just overall from the running back position, I just don't feel like I should be paying there in large field GPPs. So to make the secondary correlation with Zeke almost defeats the purpose of why, I'm going to play McLaurin Zeke, and most people are going to play McLaurin Zeke, and I don't want to play a $7,800 running back. It's like, why did I make that lineup to begin with?
Yeah. That makes sense. I mean, his Zeke's kind of rush share trend is, I think, pretty concerning. And like, obviously last week was the, kind of the pinnacle of that, but like, it's been a downward trend really all season. Like the gap between Elliott and Pollard is, came to a near split last week, but has really been trending that way all season. So, it does seem like a concerning spot to pay up for him when, I think there are some interesting options at that. I like, to me, I much prefer a guy like Jones, or going Kamara or something like that. Well, cool. Yeah, I got nothing else.
But you guys at Advanced Sports Analytics, you're starting a Substack?
Correct. Yeah. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. Yeah, we I think this Friday are going to launch a Substack. Think of it as kind of like an ASA Lite. I know a lot of our tools require a lot of manual user use, and not really sure that is for everyone. I think sometimes people might just want the distilled output of kind of the most summary metrics that we're looking at, many of which kind of we discuss on this show. And we want to create a format that distills a lot of the information that is available on ASA into a non-static, kind of just written and visualization heavy piece. We will release the first one free tomorrow, and after that we're planning for, I think, a $10 a month subscription. And yeah, I think if it's for people who probably aren't ASA subscribers but would like to have access to the information that we have available on our site, but really don't want to take the time to engage with the tools, use them themselves, learn how to use them, and like, that's fine. Because time
is money. Time is money, Stuart.
It's super valuable, and like, I am able to work through the tools efficiently because I built them and understand how they work. But like, we get that isn't for everyone. So we do want to put together a platform that has the information that's available at ASA, but in a more simple and kind of distilled format. So you can follow us on Twitter to get more information about that. We should have some announcements coming soon regarding that. So
and then your Twitter account, AS Analytics DFS?
Yes, correct. I think probably if you just search Advanced Sports Analytics, I hope that you could find, pop up towards the top as well. So
you don't want to make it hard for people. People don't want to use the tools, right? You have to tell them where to go.
Yeah. No, and like, I think that's fair, right? Like you said, time is valuable. Not everyone has kind of the time to.
Marvin Jones has the time. Marvin Jones is on the field 95% of the time. He can use your tools while he's playing. He's not catching any balls. He has plenty of time.
Yeah, decoy Marvin Jones. We'll see. Hey, maybe this week's the week.
We say that every week. We're going to be saying that I'm going to have gray. I'm going to have beard by the time he gets there, right? By the time he's 2% owned at 3,200, and then he has 3 touchdowns when everyone got sick of him.
Yeah.
Well, you could find Stewart himself on Twitter. Start Gibson. I'm Blender HD on Twitter. You could always tweet it. Tweet at me. I'm always in the premium Discord on RotoGrinders if you have any questions. And maybe I can go back-to-back weeks. And if okay, I've won the first place last week. I'll make it easier. I'll take second place this week, and someone else can have it. I'll take the 20,000.
Yeah, share some with the rest of us. Give us a shot.
I've been playing Marvin Jones every week for the past 3 years. I've given enough in that I'm finally getting it back.
Nice.
So for Stuart, that has been the Advanced Sports Analytics Show here on RotoGrinders.com.